Hi, my name is Kevin McDonald, and I'm declaring my independence. Independence from what? Why, negative thoughts and energy, of course. Chief among them, hate, division, and fear. You see, I know that we're all one, and together we can solve any problem, save our planet and each other. Please, join me as we come together as one and choose a better way to be. So now, let's begin with my independence report. There we go. How are you today?
I am doing wonderful. How are you doing?
Just doing awesome. Thank you very much. It's a beautiful day. Wow, it's cold. And where are you calling from?
I am in California, Northern California, in between San Francisco and Sacramento. So it's a pretty nice day out today.
Well, I'm sorry you have to be inside for a whole hour or so, but it'll be worth your time. I'm really pretty sure. Let's talk about my favorite subject, which is you. Where did you come from? Where did you get started? You've been a professional speaker for 6 years or so, and you've been an advocate for mental health. And where did you get started? Where did your motivation come from?
Well, I got started. I've been speaking a while. I kind of started in corporate America with doing presentations and things of that nature, and knowing that I really had a great niche for communication. I just needed to figure out what the topic matter was going to be, hone in on that, make sure I was educated and trained enough to speak and in some areas empower women. So I just started working on kind of my craft and becoming a professional speaker, and joined Toastmasters, which was really significant for helping me work on my platform. And then life's experiences helped to kind of mold me into the empowerment and mental health advocate speaker that I've become. So,
well, that is awesome, and I think working with women's issues are becoming more and more prevalent, but they still are not as mainstream or as talked about as they need to be. And I'm glad that you're out there doing that. Now, when we talk about mental health, how do you frame that? How do you work with mental health?
Well, to be very honest with you, probably 7-8 years ago, I knew nothing about mental health, probably wasn't even really interested in mental health. And I married someone who was undiagnosed with severe mental illness. I was later diagnosed after we got married with bipolar disorder, schizophrenia.
Surprise.
And on top of that, yeah, surprise, happy marriage. And so on top of that, had a hidden drug addiction that I didn't know about.
Okay.
So, right, that was my anniversary gift. So by the time I got out of that marriage, which was in a 3-year span, I understood that there were a lot of people that were trying to navigate mental illness. I also understood there were a lot of people that had mental illness and were not accepting of it. And the horrific 3 years that I just had, I wanted to be able to help as many women and men who are caregivers or living with someone with mental illness, but also encourage those who have mental illness to not be held down by the stigma and to get the help that you can have so you can have a productive, healthy life. So that kind of really is my driving force, and it is an absolute passion of mine.
Can we talk about, I have some personal knowledge of this one because my brother had a relationship with somebody who was diagnosed with bipolar, and who did not. And it was the oddest experience that I was ever part of, because one day she could be the queen of wonderful. She was so happy, and then the dark side would come out. What is bipolar, and how, it's kind of undiagnosed. It's kind of a recent thing, isn't it?
No, bipolar has been around for a long time. You probably know it as manic depression. That's
Ah,
bipolar disorder. So before people knew that was the literal term for bipolar, that would be people that it was said they were manic depressive. And the reason for that is they go in and out of moods from being manic to being now somber and depressed. So, there's different levels of bipolar disorder, but that's the origination of it. Yeah.
oh, that's why that's why it was kind of new to me, and
Right.
and I didn't understand the severity of how it can affect a relationship and affect somebody's life and their working life and everything about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the importance of us really understanding and respecting what mental illness is, which is something I totally hadn't before. But when you are in a relationship or you have a family member that is bipolar disorder, it's a chemical imbalance in the brain. And the bipolar disorder can often shift and change your mood. It can take you in and out of reality. And that's what was happening in the relationship that I was in, is the constant mood changes. And oftentimes, people who have bipolar disorder can be sexually promiscuous. And that was an issue as well that we tried to navigate.
Yeah,
So
that was one of her issues.
yes, yeah. And here's the thing, and this is why it's so important to get to education. Without treatment and medication, it's almost very hard to manage that. Because if you have a mental imbalance that's telling you that up is down and down is up, you don't know any difference until you get yourself where you have the treatment and the support that you need to. And oftentimes it has to be medicated to keep your brain operating in balance properly. So you know that up is up and down is down, and there is no differentiation of that. And so that's how it can be really dangerous. Bipolar disorder folks are really more so dangerous to themselves than to anyone else, because it's really the harm that they do to themselves. They have a higher rate of contracting HIV because of the promiscuity and the living in and out of reality. I did a lot of those researches because that stuff had directly affected my life. And I needed to understand why. I said it was blue outside, he said it was purple, and now he wanted to have a full fight about it. I needed to understand those things because I was pretty sure it was blue.
Well, and just so you know, Susan has chimed in and she's asked, "Can you imagine living with that being your mom? What would that be like?"
Yeah. I mean, navigating mental illness and being with someone who doesn't recognize or want to get the treatment. And keep in mind, medication is not Willy Wonka's chocolate, golden ticket. So oftentimes you have to come back and adjust the medication, and medication may not work anymore. Or, one situation with my ex, he got on a medication and it took him totally manic within a matter of hours. So you really have to navigate, and you really have to care about that person, because I can assure you your life will never be the same while you're in that situation. You will leave looking completely like Phyllis Diller, I'm just saying.
Yeah. Well, I have to tell you, my this young lady and my brother were together, and he told me the story of how he was at her house. And he was at her house for a couple of days, and then she got really, really mad. He didn't even know why she was mad. She just got really, really mad and threw him out. The next day, she showed up at his house with a casserole of spaghetti and no clothes on.
Yeah.
So she was sending the poor boy all kinds of signals, either the negative signals and the positive signals, and he had no experience with just like you did. It took you a while to figure out what the hell.
But there's some issues here. Yeah. And it takes a while to really navigate and to really understand. And the sad thing about it is that we really have to understand of those who love or care or have someone with mental illness is that they oftentimes can't control that. She probably would not have been able to control that. For him, he might have thought, oh my God, like I thought. I didn't handle it well because at first all I thought is you're destroying my life. I had a really regular life. I didn't have all of this confusion and drama. And now I have ascended into the bowels of hell and I didn't understand why. But I started to later, once I got educated, understand that that was his life. He was unmanaged. His mental illness was unmanaged. He really couldn't do very much about a lot of that if he didn't stay on medication and didn't follow a plan. It's hard for some of them to do.
Did you ever follow up later on after the divorce and stuff? Has he recovered, or is he still going through that, or is he still with us?
You know, had we had an amicable divorce where it wasn't a lot of angst and trepidation, I might have followed through to make sure. He's contacted me several times since. I don't engage in conversation. He ended up bringing a woman into the relationship, and because of the unmanaged bipolar disorder, there was a lot of aggression. We had a lot of violence in our marriage. So at this point, I have really no interest if he's, you know, I'll leave it at that.
I get it. My brother got burned so many times that he got really wary of her, and so he wouldn't take any of her calls.
Yeah.
And what she would do is she would leave him and then go to another relationship or two or three until she was done. And then when those dried up, then she would come back to him because he was the only one that would talk to her at a certain point.
Yeah, they soon realize who they can, by people within unmanaged and undiagnosed bipolar disorder or untreated, right? They hop in and out of relationships because they're trying to find something that makes them feel good. And so for their mind, it's having a new relation, someone that doesn't know that they have all this stuff going on. The moment the person finds out, it's kind of like a narcissist a little bit. Now they want out because you found them out. So now they go find another unsuspecting person, you know, which is how that operates. But they jump in and out of relationships. That's exactly what he did. We were married, and he ended up having an affair on me with a woman at the mental health facility who was HIV positive. And so, right, yeah. And so, you know, that was that. So after that, even though he's reached out a lot of times, and there's no conversation for us to have, I did my job as a wife and as someone that was supporting him, and he brought a third party in, so I'm out.
I get it. You know, it makes perfect sense. Well, thank goodness that you were strong enough of a person to be able to recognize it and to get away. You also work with domestic violence, and there's a lot of people that are not that strong that are able to get away. Talk about your expertise with domestic violence.
Well, the situation dealing with my ex-spouse was a culmination of everything that probably could have been bad. I had never been in any type of domestic violence. I had never dealt with men that were disrespectful to women. I grew up with 4 older brothers that really treated me always with respect and raised me to be respectful towards myself. And so being with someone who I found out later abused and beat other women. And so marrying me was just marrying somebody who could help me apparently further along his vices. He never put his hands on me. Let me say that. I always like to be very transparent that I probably was the only one that he never hit. But the threats, destroying things, destructive, always threats. I've had him try to set me up with the police to get arrested. I actually did get arrested one time. And they, of course, you know, immediately, you know, didn't press any charges or anything of that nature. But that's what someone who's, you know, really broken and has a lot of trauma, they're looking to kind of ease it off of them and give it to someone else. I didn't understand I was a victim of domestic violence to probably the umpteenth time the police came to the house. And one of the police officers who was super nice, and he said, listen, you're a victim of domestic violence. He was giving me a pamphlet. I said, I don't need that. I said, he's never put his hands on me. He says, domestic violence is not just physical. It's emotional. It's psychological. It's financial. He said it's sexual. It can be a number of things. He says, but you're dealing with someone who can't help himself, and he's taking that out on you. He says, and you need to make sure you get some help. So once I understood and did research, then I started training and getting certified so that I can know how to support other women and men, because I've had men come to, my presentations as well, what it looks like, how it looks, and how to prepare yourself to remove yourself from that situation and how it has nothing to do with you.
And for those that are just joining us, TAMURI Richardson is our guest, and she is a professional speaker. And I get the motivation that you had to become a professional speaker was to help people with the mental health issues and with the domestic violence issues. And now you're going around giving seminars and talks about these things. I applaud you for following your passion.
Thank you.
If more people did that, we would be in a better place than we are today. If they would follow their passion, because you've got something to share, and it's important that people hear it. So thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I think it's important as well that we all be of service to each other. So definitely.
And you've been tell us about your speaking career. Where have you been? What have you been doing?
Well, let me see. I mean, I have had the privilege of, traveling and speaking. In COVID, I do a lot of virtual communications, but I actually get contacted a lot to do domestic violence keynote addresses. I do a lot of speaking conferences. I'm also an influential storyteller. So I also hold workshops where I coach individuals on how to successfully tell their story, because it's not just about speaking. And I have different arenas that I talk about different things. So even though I have a story that can have you crying and probably rocking in the corner somewhere, it does me no good to have my audience detaching from me or overly emotional. So I try to help individuals with the cues to be able to disseminate your message so that you're pulling people in and they're able to take those cues themselves. I have clients in the Dubai that I do communication training with public speaking, how to speak in front of the camera, how to feel comfortable communicating and having the confidence. A lot of their women are really coming into, and they're being promoted to come into their own and be in front of the camera. So I was hired by one of the organizations out there that really promotes women in the media in the Dubai and in areas connected. I also do public speaking and debate for young children in middle and high school, teach them the importance of how to communicate, and that debating is just a civilized way of arguing. So I teach them how to be a good debater. And listen, I'm in COVID, but I am never at, I don't think I have a week where I'm not being requested to speak somewhere or, do something. I speak and present for NAMI. So, we do mental health presentations. We've done them for Amazon. We've done them for Google, and I've done the presentations for the Oakland African American Chamber of Commerce. So we've really been out there, and I've had the privilege of kind of being out in the forefront and sharing not only my message, but how to support and help other people. So it's been absolutely fantastic. I love it.
What were you doing before you were doing this?
Right. Prior to this, well, I come from corporate America. So prior to this, I'd worked in corporate America for a long time. I took a break because I also deal in real estate a little bit, just my own personal stuff. So I was kind of doing that. I was getting kind of into public speaking a little bit, but it wasn't until I went through what I went through. I started writing my first book. I just finished my third book, 10 Steps to Becoming a Highly Effective Public Speaker. I wrote that book because I really wanted to support people in publicly speaking and how to be comfortable. I came out the womb talking, but for those who didn't, these are some of the steps that'll help you do it. And it's taken off and it has been magnificent. I mean, I live for it. Absolutely.
Now you can pick up your books at Amazon, right?
Absolutely. Amazon.com. My second book is The Power of Why. It's actually a collaboration and it became an international bestseller. And my third book should be coming out in March, Trusting Someone Else's Heart, which is an in-depth detail of my story of how I not only just dealing with someone that had these issues, but really my personal journey, because I think we all have to take and accept personal responsibility in everything that we do. So how did I walk myself into this? But most importantly, how did I put on my tennis shoes and walk and run out of it? So.
Well, and I again, I just have to applaud you. You're following your passion. You're living the life that you love. And so few people do that in reality. It would be great if more people were to to do that and follow it. Was there? I got to ask you, because there had to be a moment when you said to yourself, "Self, I'm going to go do this." And was there a message that you got from on high? Did an angel come down and tap you on the head with a wand? What? Because there had to be a moment in time when you said, I'm going to be a public speaker because I've got something to say and it's important.
Yes. And let me tell you when I absolutely knew that I had to use my big mouth for good, right? So after I found out that my then husband, now ex-husband, was sleeping with the mental health caseworker, case manager at the facility, right? So now he's having good times at the facility with this woman. What did it for me was that I understood that I was now a cautionary tale, right? And I wanted one for people to understand that when you have family members with mental illness and they go into these facilities, you make sure the facilities are about the family structure and the caregiving of this individual, not their personal idea what the caregiving should be, but the complete structure. And I wanted to make sure nobody went through what I went through, even to the point of going and speaking at the Senate and making sure people understood that this is a no-no what she did, taking advantage of someone. Now I needed people to understand mental illness is serious. This can destroy your family. And so that was okay, so now I have to use my big mouth for good. Yeah.
Well, and you're an author and you have a publicist. And if you were to take this story to your publicist and you mark it as fiction, he'd say, "Nah, that's not plausible. That's not
right."
Gonna happen."
Right.
Yes. So it was really pretty amazing that all of that it's like really, and then on top, and then really, and then more, and then it's
right.
It is awesome that first of all, it's awesome that you're still smiling, by the way. Mm-hmm. and you've gotten through that. And I know when you speak, that comes through in how you speak, in your body language, and how you respond to the people in the audience, and it gives them hope. And that's what you do, which is pretty outstanding.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much for that. I did an interview probably last month, and someone, wrote in and they said, "Gee, I want to be smiling like you. I'm dealing with a similar situation." And I said, "So smile then." We often give away all of our power and our control. When this started happening, the first thing I did was I went to therapy because I needed to help someone to help me navigate my emotions. Not because my marriage was ending, they end all the time, and this was not like this was a great marriage, but because I had done so much to love and to care for someone who didn't have the ability to love and care for me back. But not only that, when you're dealing with also a mental illness that they don't even have the ability to manage on themselves on their own. So I needed to go and get myself back, and having someone, commit infidelity in your marriage, that was the biggest problem for me. Listen, we could have divorced and ended up as friends. But when you bring another party, and I never took it as it was a deficit in me as a woman, ever. But what I did understand is that people will destroy you. They'll destroy your family. They'll help people destroy you. And that's the nature of, that's not everyone, but that's the nature of some people. I had to manage the betrayal. The betrayal was the thing that could make me bitter, hateful, and angry. And once I really understood that a lot of his actions he had no control over, if I really understood it as a mental health advocate, well, then I can't be angry at him, because then I understand what's happening and why it's happening. And his behavior was very true to what the symptoms was. So, I don't love, I don't hate him. I don't wish him well. I don't wish him bad. It was a moment in time. I passed by it and I'm just moving on to something else. But I can smile at it because I came out on the other side of it, and I'm not angry at anyone about it. It allowed me to come and be able to do something to help other people. So I smile and laugh a lot. I've got a great life, but on top of that, I get to meet a lot of wonderful people and share my story with other individuals and encourage them. So I'm always smiling and laughing in interviews, because I'm like the other side. At one point, I was crying all the time. So I was
going to ask you, how long did it take you to get out of that, to get over it?
It took took me a while, and it took me long. It probably didn't take me as long as it could have. When I found out that the woman was sleeping with him at the facility, I sued the facility and I sued the woman. I didn't sue her because I wanted my husband or anything of that nature. I wanted to stop her and the facility from doing what they were allowing her to do, so she couldn't do this to someone else. Because if you're going to go sleep with somebody's husband who's in a mental illness facility, I'm assuming you should probably be in the bed next door to him, because obviously there's something wrong significantly with you. So I understood all of that. I could have probably healed sooner, but when you're in a lawsuit and you're doing depositions, you're reliving that stuff all the time. And it was probably about a year and a half in, and I talked to my dad, and he asked me, did I have any peace? And I said, no. He says, listen, these people will never allow anything like this ever to happen in their facility. He said, but if you don't have any peace, he says, and all of this is for naught. It doesn't matter. He says, and it's going to drag on because obviously what she's done is heinous and it's egregious. He says, but you have to figure out, where do you get your peace? So that's what I did. I allowed myself to move forward and put that behind me. And I only mention it when I'm telling the story, but it doesn't affect me. Like, my heart doesn't move. There's no emotion from it. Besides, it's a story that I'm telling you to help you get to where you need to get to, but it doesn't affect me anymore. So
that is truly awesome, because a lot of us have especially where relationships are concerned, have had negative things go on, and it took me. I was married for 24 years, and it took me. I still have to say that in some aspects of it, because of how it all went down, I'm still angry about some things of it, and with some people that were involved with it. But it was like it wasn't like your situation, but it was like your situation. If that makes any sense.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So I'm glad that you survived it, and you're now going to help other people. Where do you see the future for you? What are you going to do next?
I absolutely want to continue doing what I'm doing. Like I stated before, I do a lot of presenting for NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, presenting and speaking. We teach about mental health, the stigmas at work, and how employers can help support their employees who might be struggling and give them a place of support if they have mental illness. I also speak and present for In Our Own Voices, where we kind of share some of what we went through and how we personally, from being married to that individual, I'd never dealt with certain things before. I now live with anxiety. I now live with PTSD from the behaviors, the conduct, the threatening, the throwing, and all of that type of destruction. And initially, I was battling with depression because of the feelings of betrayal. So we help to encourage people that there are resources out there, and that this doesn't have to become your story. Yeah, this is a part of my storyline, but I now control that story. It doesn't control me as it once did. And I'm also a member of the National Coalition of 100 Black Women, the Oakland Bay Area chapter. So we focus on empowering and supporting Black women and young girls. And I'm affiliated with a couple of other volunteer organizations where we're all about how to support. And I want to make sure that, and I tell people, use me as a cautionary tale. What I didn't do, how I didn't vet that person properly, and you make sure you meet the mother, you meet the father, you meet the siblings, you meet the children. That gives you the picture of who you're going to be dealing with. And had I met any of those people, we would not be having this story today here, Kevin. I would not know you.
Well, I'm glad you do, because your story is important for people to get it out. I did want to ask you, though.
Yeah.
I was in between. I was doing radio 20 years or so ago, and I had to quit and get a like a real job, and so I drove bus. I was a bus driver in Seattle for 11 years, and I saw lots of dysfunction, lots of the community dysfunction, especially in the Black community. There's a lot of dysfunction. A lot of kids, little girls that were not even 20 years old yet, that were having their own babies. And it's so heartbreaking, because that kind of casts their life for the foreseeable future when they're just still babies. How can we help all of our communities live life more authentically and live life a little bit better, and to work together to eliminate some of that stuff that we're all going through, and the mental illness and all of that. It seems like such a daunting challenge. How do we get it done?
That is a fantastic question. Thank you very much for asking that. And I like where you said this is something that's going on in all communities. Absolutely. I think definitely the spotlight is in some communities. But let me tell you what I tell. I also, one of my presentations that I give is about setting boundaries and why setting boundaries is so important. And again, I use me as a cautionary tale and everything. One of the biggest reasons, two of the biggest reasons that I had to immediately get out of my marriage is that I have a daughter and I have a son. And what I understood was I was going to be the example for my daughter of the type of men she was going to get with, how she was going to act and operate in a relationship, and how she was going to let someone treat her. And that was not okay with me. The man that I had brought into my son's life, and he has a father who's very involved, and their father, my first husband, is very involved and very active. He's a great dad. But the man that they're living with is going to be the example of how I treat my mother, my sister, and how I treat other women and talk to other women. And if I allow this man who's broken to treat and mistreat me, I am now setting the example. The answer, in my opinion, is that question is that parents have to be better examples for their children because we are a mirror. My daughter emulates everything I do to a T. My son is a mama's boy, and this is what they're going to mirror, how they behave. My son is going to pick up the type of woman and marry the type of woman based off of the type of woman that I am. He tells me all the time, Mom, I'm going to marry a woman just like you. That's a compliment to me. But how I operate and raise them and the examples, I don't bring men around them. They see me with two men, their father and their stepfather. How we behave, the conduct that we exhibit in front of our children and the lessons that we're teaching them either verbally or non-verbally, that's where all of that comes from. And sometimes there are exceptions to the rules. I mean, there are some great families and kids still end up getting pregnant or kids still end up in getting drugs. Those often can be peer pressure and are part of the signs. But if we're doing our job wholeheartedly as a parent and putting in that time and effort, less distraction.
I see the drug culture and how drugs has affected an entire generation. Mm-hmm. I see a lot of children being raised by grandparents mm-hmm. because either mom or dad are either gone or they're in prison and stuff, and that's all races that and that's everywhere, and it is. And so that's why I really applaud what you're doing because we have got to fix it or it's going to be just a mess. And for the next generation coming up, I knew that the generation that are adults now were the first daycare generation. Mm-hmm. They weren't raised by their parents; they were raised by a $8 an hour daycare worker, and their parents either were invested in alcohol or drugs and they split up, and so they don't have a mom and dad and stuff. It's really hard. How do you in your frame of reference, what can we do as a society to help people stay together? I think that our mental health system is broken. Mm-hmm. We don't have enough support for people who need it to keep people together and families together. I'd be interested in your viewpoint. What do you think?
Absolutely. One of the biggest problems is mental health. You have people that are functioning as if, there's nothing wrong with life, but they're battling with racing thoughts. They're battling with, voices talking to them, behavioral mood changes. It's impossible to have a productive marriage or relationship, regardless if you have children in it or not, if you have mental illness that's taking you in and out of reality. But that's where it's also important. It also still, for me, in my opinion, it falls back on the responsibility of the parent, especially in my community. I speak on my community because oftentimes there is a stigma of mental illness. And, but imagine navigating police brutality, social injustice, racism, things that we didn't create, we don't know how to get rid of them because they weren't our creation. That will give anyone anxiety and PTSD trying to navigate that. Now you add that on trying to live, trying to make sure you're economically sound, trying to take care of a family, and trying to navigate those things. That's one spectrum of it. But then, like anything, you have people that are self-destructive and don't see that the family structure is the crux of what you should be holding on to, and don't see that you should be creating generational wealth, and don't see that your children will come behind you and be able to hold the family structure down or sink it with the Titanic. You know, those are things that have to be taught and trained. And if you are not taught that your job is not to continue procreating the earth without the benefit of having, solid relationships and parents, women are having babies with men who are not even boyfriend potential, and then they're getting pregnant. That's your responsibility to make sure. But if you're dealing with a man who has mental illness or a woman who has mental illness that's untreated, and you don't know what to look for, what the symptoms are, you think every other person is irrational and jumping to you just don't know. These things are going to continue until mental illness is like chewing gum. It becomes our norm to understand it and to be trained by it. We're going to continue to have these things because I think a lot of our problems, like you said, is undiagnosed, untreated, and the lack of respect for mental health and mental illness in our community.
Oh, I couldn't agree more, and that's one of the reasons why the tagline of this podcast is declaring our freedom from hate, division, and fear, because there's a lot of hate, division, and fear because of people not being aware of what they could be doing to help each other. It's interesting. I did a podcast a while ago with 5 20-year-old African American men. And I did another one with one of their moms and her husband, and they have what I term as a blended family. He's black, she's white, and their 2 kids. And so I'm having this conversation with these 5 young men, and the subject of police comes up. And this is right after Mr. Floyd and some other heinous things that happened. And I said, the difference between you guys and me is, and they said, what? And I said, a while ago, I was driving down a major highway in Seattle, and I got pulled over because I was speeding. I didn't think I was speeding. I thought the speed limit was different there. So I get out of my car and start walking towards the policeman. And all these kids are going, no, right. You didn't do that, did you? Yeah. And I said, well, yeah, I did. And the policeman didn't take out his gun and shoot me. He didn't even think anything of it. And what makes my blood boil is this lady that I know. I worked with her in the past, and her son has her number on speed dial. So if he is ever pulled over, she can respond in a moment's notice because of the fear that they have of what potentially could happen. And we have got to get rid of that stigma, that whole problem, because it doesn't make any sense to me. What do you think?
I think you've got good police officers, you've got bad. I actually live in a community surrounded by law enforcement, and we all have such a great close relationship. And so I know there are really good law enforcement out there. But here's the problem. The bad are really taking more precedence over any of the good. The reality, and our reality is, and I grew up with 4 older brothers who were stopped for driving while black all the time in nice cars or in neighborhoods that they assumed that we shouldn't be in. The assumption of continuously wanting to put black people in their place because we don't deserve something because you deemed it. Not realizing, and I think if a lot of, white people thought about this, they have inherited wealth off of the backs of slaves. So had it not been for, slavery, they wouldn't have inherited generational wealth, which is why the whole reparations conversation is coming in, because you had a leg up thanks for stepping on our necks. But I think that there needs to be more psychological evaluations for law enforcement. I also think that, there should be a way to disarm. I don't understand how when they stop a white person, they're getting shot in the arm and in the leg, and we're automatically a death sentence. You know, we could never, I would, as a Black woman, never get out of my car to what we are, you sit still, you don't even breathe. Because you don't know what finger trigger happy cop is going to come to your door and decide that you breathe too loud. Now it just happened. I actually had an incident a couple of months ago at my home. Now I live in a predominantly white city in a predominantly white area, and the police didn't know who I was. There's no reason for them to know who I was, but someone in the neighborhood must have called them and hung up. And two officers came to my door. It's at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'm tired. And one is Black and one is white. So they came to my door, and I'm in my pajama, my gown, and I'm opening the door, and I'm tired. The officer puts the light up to me, and he says, "Well, someone called from this." I said, "No one called. It's just myself and my 2 children." He says, "Well, are you sure?" I said, "Yeah, I'm sure. There's no one here. I'm tired, right?" He says, "Could you step outside the door?" I told him, "No. Why would I step outside the door of my house? No, I can't step outside the door." And he says, "Well, are you sure?" I said, "It's not me. Have a good night." Well, what I did the next day, I called down to the police department to speak to the chief of police. I told him, "I'm not filing a complaint, but I want this to be a learning lesson for you." I don't believe he would have asked a white woman to step outside of her house at 3 o'clock in the morning in her gown because somebody supposedly called you from my house with a distress call. How are you helping me? How is your visit helping me? And he asked me, did I want to file a complaint? I said, I don't want to file a complaint because I think he didn't know proper. But what I want you to understand, this is why there is distrust between police and Black Americans. The problem is when you come to my house, I'm well informed, I'm well educated, and I often know a lot of people that'll make a phone call to you. So he should know that don't assume because I'm Black that I don't know any better. I know better. And so he said he was going to talk to him. That was absolutely not the correct thing to do at 3 o'clock in the morning. I said he wouldn't have asked a white woman to do it. And I know he wouldn't have. That's what we deal with.
I know.
On a regular basis.
And it angers me because it's not right. It's not fair. And we will never, until we get through this, we will never as a society heal and believe that regardless of, it's like the color of our skin, so fucking what? Excuse the expression. It's like there's a wise man who once said, judge a man by the content of his heart. I believe that would be Martin Luther King, if I'm not mistaken. And it was, that was one of the more profound statements I've heard, because it really is true. Content of his character, content of your heart, that's what we should judge people by. Because I know lots and lots of white people who don't have very good character and have got crappy hearts. And that's, and we as a society need to get past that. And that's why I'm glad that you are out there. You're an articulate person. You're smart. You've been through the war. You've come out clean the other side. You're raising 2 beautiful children. I assume they're a little older now. Are they teenagers yet?
15 and 14, yes.
Oh, bless your soul.
Straight A students, both of them, honor roll.
Oh, good for you. That's hard. Teenage years. I can't imagine. I was a teenager in the 70s. I can't imagine what these kids are up against now. The prevalence of drugs, pornography, all these things that are out there for them that are at the end of your arm because they're connected to your phone. It makes it really tough on parents. So I assume that your communication with them is you're talking to them all the time and
absolutely. They're very individually astute and very smart. They're doing excellent in school, very well liked by, teachers and so forth. My son is an aspiring engineer. He's a chess player, so he's involved with a lot of different engineering organizations. He's going to be joining a camp soon. And my daughter's an artist. She draws a lot. She's trying to figure out kind of what she wants to do, but, they will probably be able to go to any college that they want to. But they also understand the limitations. Like I said, we live in a predominantly white area. And although I want them to be as sociable and have such a multicultural, eclectic group of friends, they also have to understand that there are limitations with us. But those limitations do not stop us and does not prevent us from being as great as possible. So there are no, my mother didn't allow us to have any excuses for not excelling. And I don't give my kids any, because we've been shattering glass ceilings, and that's what we have to keep on doing. So we can't look at things and say, well, I can't do this, because yeah, you can do it. Just figure out another way how to do it. But they're bright kids, and I keep them up. They're not on social media. I try to prevent bringing any forces into their world that's going to take away from them being as great as I know they are going to be. So listen, I dealt with a drug addict with mental illness, so anything after that is butter.
Yeah, so
nothing.
so when is your book about parenting coming out?
Right. Right. That might be my fifth book. I'm working on my fourth one now, but that might be my fifth book, because they're great kids. And so yeah, maybe.
Tell me about the book that you've written. I think it just got published. That is the group of women together. Is that the one that just?
That was my second book, The Power of Why. It was a collaboration of 22 women. And we're sharing how we got into doing business, and why we started doing online courses, online workshops, and how successful or not that's been, and things that we've learned. So I wrote in my chapter about being an influential storyteller and where that came from. So I give only snippets and not even go into the depths of this situation, but how to tell different stories, how to draw them in, and then kind of even more in depth of how to do the workshop, what it looks like. So we're encouraging women to be entrepreneurs and to step out of yourself. One of my presentations is redefining yourself. I'm a mother, but that's not the crux of who I am. I'm more than just a mother. I was more than someone's wife. I have my own hopes and dreams. And when your kids get grown, what are you going to do? Shoulda, woulda, coulda? No, I'm going to do all of that while they're growing, so they can have me as an example that you don't give up and that you continue to rise as close to the top as possible, and go over it if you can.
Bless your soul. I couldn't. That's wonderful. So you need to keep out there and keep on keeping on, because it really is important. I do have to say, and I was just thinking about this while we were talking. I am talking about the teenagers and the younger generation. There is a shift happening, because those kids, I see them a lot more inclusive than older people are. They don't consider. I was driving my bus one day. A lot of the stories come from driving my bus one day, and there were like 3 girls that were sitting near the front, and I didn't even look at I have no idea who they were, but they were talking about boys, and one said to the other one, he's cute, what is he? And she said, well, he's Filipino, and he's, I think, African American, and he's Spanish, and that's a nice combination. I bet you he's got great skin. It's like it's different now, and that's why I was telling my 90-year-old mother that's why people get old and die, so that the generation can come up and they can be more inclusive, and that we can leap forward to the next level. And that's is so important that we do that. But then there's some old folks like me that need to hang around, and like you that need to hang around and to help people, and to present something positive that people can look at. And you are the epitome of what I do on this podcast, and I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much. Absolutely. Thank you for having me. This was fantastic. And I think anytime that I can share what I know and how I know it, and support women and men and families, it's become, I didn't believe when people would say, oh, it's my calling. I'd be like, it kind of sounds like kind of Twilight Zone-ish. But I kind of really believe that this is kind of what I was intended to do. And I enjoy doing it. I've been able to support and help so many people. So I go to sleep every night with a smile on my face, knowing that I'm doing something with purpose. Yeah.
And the cool thing about what you're doing is that there are people that you've impacted in a positive way, and you'll never hear their story.
Yeah, absolutely.
You will never know who they are or how you impacted them, but they're going to remember when they came to listen to you speak, and it will have life-changing consequences for them in a positive way.
That's right.
That's really good. Let's make sure your information is out there so that everybody can go. Your website is again
www.TLeannespeaks.com. That's TLEANNE speaks.com.
okay.
And also they can always Google me, TAMURI Richardson, TAMURI Richardson. And I'm on Facebook under TLeanne Speaking Pros LLC and LinkedIn as well. And is all my contact information. And also too, I get sometimes people will send me a messenger telling me their story and me offering them support. Also, if you go on my Facebook page, the first Friday of every month, we have a Black Minds Matter support group through NAMI, where it's specifically for Black folks. And we just support each other and lend out resources that we each, that's needed to make sure that everyone's getting the care they need, right down to, making sure they can get the medical that they need for the area that they're in. So, yeah.
And just had a listener say you're a phenomenal woman.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
And it's important. Now, before we go, I always like to give you an opportunity, or give my guests an opportunity to the floor is yours, my dear, to say to our audience now and who will listen to you in the future, anything that you'd like to say.
Absolutely. I think it is so important to make sure that you are being deliberately used in whatever and anything, and not to allow yourself to be put in a box. We're often put into a box and we don't know how to get out of it. But anyone that is not supporting you on a new journey, a new adventure, something that's going to better uplift you, then you have to look at what type of box that they're putting you in. And a physical box has four walls. A metaphoric box is mentally, and it's in your mind. And it's how you knock that out and make sure that you have people around that are supporting you to be the best you at all times that you can be. So I want to encourage everyone to always be deliberately you. You are more than a label, and to go after every hope and dream that you have. You never know who you might be affecting. So, everyone.
I wish I'd have said that. That's beautiful. So I want to thank you again. TAMURI Richardson has been our guest, and go to Amazon, pick up her books. There's 3 of them out there, and I assume that if you just go to Amazon and type in Richardson, your name will, or the books will come up.
Go to Amazon.com, go to books, and type in TAMURI Richardson, and they'll come up. Or even if you Google me, they'll pop up. There are many bookstores; they'll pop up either way.
If somebody wants to use, I know how much it costs to put a book together. If somebody wants to, like pay you the full price and for shipping, do you do that direct, or do you use Amazon on those guys?
I do some direct. For my first book, I do direct shipping, but the second book is an ebook, and my first book also just became an ebook as well for those who like to look at it on its Kindle. And my third book that's coming out, it'll be both of them, but sometimes I do direct. And then I have people that call me that want to, have tips on how to publish a book. So, reach out. I'm full of resources, and if I can help, I will help.
That, I believe, would be book number 6. How to help somebody publish a book. And then I've already come up with book number 7 for you.
Right.
You know what that is?
What?
When as people send you messages and through Messenger and talk about their situation, you do have a dialogue with them about their situation and your counsel to help them through their situation. That, I think, would be a dynamic book.
Yeah, we'll have to work on that title though, but yeah.
I'm not that smart, but I don't know what you're calling it. But I know that it would be good, whatever it was. So, TAMURI Richardson has been our guest. Go find her books. She's got an online presence, and it's going to continue to grow as we go through COVID and you do more stuff online. I assume you're on YouTube as well.
I do have videos posted on YouTube, absolutely. So if you type in TAMURI Richardson. I have to put all my videos, but I have about 4 or 5 videos. Check them out; they're great. They were at different conferences that I was at. So yeah, check them out, please.
Awesome! That is just awesome. Thank you for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
I have to close out, but I'd like you to hang around for just a moment and stuff. And for everybody else, I hope that you have a wonderful day. It's I enjoy these talks so much that it's made my day just a little bit better. So I appreciate it, and I hope that you all have a great day as well. Hey, and thanks for listening to this episode all the way to the end. Hey, pretty cool. Hey, don't forget to follow us so you can receive regular updates and new posts. And remember, take care of each other because each other's all we've got. See you next time on My Independence Report.